When we hear the phrase, "Who discovered America?" most people think of one name, Christopher Columbus. In 1492, sailing under the Spanish crown, he crossed the Atlantic Ocean and reached islands in the Caribbean. That event changed world history. But the story is far more complex because America was not discovered in 1492. Millions of people already lived there. And even before Columbus, other explorers had touched its shores. So, who really discovered America? To answer that, let's go back thousands of years. Long before Europeans dreamed of distant continents. Indigenous peoples, the ancestors of today, Native Americans, had already built thriving civilizations across North and South America. Archaeologists believe that around 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, the first humans migrated from Asia to North America across a land bridge known as Beringia, which once connected Siberia and Alaska during the Ice Age. Over time, these early settlers spread across the continent. They developed rich cultures and complex societies. The Maya and Aztecs in Central America built great cities with pyramids and advanced astronomy. The Inca Empire in South America built highways and stone cities high in the Andes. In North America, tribes such as the Iroquois, Cherokee, Sioux, and many others had their own systems of government, trade, and spirituality. By the time Columbus arrived, historians estimate that 50 to 100 million people were already living across the Americas. So, the true discoverers of were its indigenous peoples. Butifuesk, who was the first European Chimera? The answer is different. Nearly 500 years before Columbus, a Viking explorer named Leif Erikson sailed from Greenland and reached the coast of North America. Around the year 1000 AD, he landed in a place we now call Newfoundland, Canada. The Vikings called it Vinland because of the wild grapes they found growing there. Leif Erikson and his crew even built a small settlement. Archaeological evidence at El Anso Meadows in Newfoundland confirms Viking presence in North America centuries before Columbus. However, the Viking colonies didn't last long. They faced challenges such as hostile encounters with local indigenous groups, isolation, and difficulty sustaining supplies. After a short time, the Vikings abandoned their settlements, and Europe largely forgot about their voyages. That brings us back to Christopher Columbus. In 1492, he set sail under the sponsorship of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. His goal was to find a westward route to Asia. Instead, after more than 2 months at sea, he reached the Bahamas, landing on an island he named San Salvador. Columbus believed he had reached Asia, but he was in fact standing in the so-called New World. Columbus went on to make for voyages across the Atlantic, exploring islands of the Caribbean, the coasts of Central and South America, and parts of what is now Venezuela. He never realized he had discovered an entirely new continent. But his voyages had enormous consequences. They opened the door for widespread European exploration, colonization, and eventually the creation of the modern Americas. It's important to understand the impact of Columbus's arrival. For Europeans, his discoveries led to immense wealth, new lands, and global expansion. For indigenous peoples, it meant disease, displacement, and destruction. Diseases like smallpox and measles, brought by Europeans, wiped out entire communities who had no immunity. Within a century of Columbus's landing, tens of millions of indigenous people had died. So, when we ask who discovered America, we really must recognize 3 answers. First, the indigenous peoples who crossed into the Americas thousands of years ago. They were the true first discoverers, building civilizations, cultures, and nations long before Europeans arrived. Second, Leif Erikson and the Vikings, who reached North America around the year 1000, long before Columbus. their expiration, eveni fidentian presence. And third, Christopher Columbus, whose voyages in 1490 to brought the Old World and the New World into lasting contact. While he went to America, his journeys reshaped global history and began a new era of colonization and cultural exchange. Today, Columbus remains a controversial figure. Some honor him for his daring voyages, while others criticize the destruction that followed. In the United States, many people now celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day to honor the original inhabitants of the land and their resilience. The truth is that America was not simply discovered in 1492. It was already home to millions of people with rich cultures and histories. Columbus's arrival marked the beginning of European colonization, but not the beginning of America itself. So, who discovered America? The answer depends on how you look at history. Indigenous peoples discovered it first, Vikings reached it next, and Columbus's voyages made it part of global history. Each chapter tells a different side of the story, and together they remind us that history is never as simple as one name or one date. If you enjoyed this story and want to learn more about hidden truths of history, make sure to subscribe and join us on our journey through time. And tell us in the comments, should we cover the story of the Vikings in more detail or the civilizations of the Native Americans before Columbus?